So welcome to the December segment of The Cutting Edge. I'm Zima, Executive Director of the California Edge Coalition. The Cutting Edge is our new interview series where I'll be connecting with leaders to discuss a range of topics related to workforce development, education, and training. Today, I'm really excited to be connecting with Assemblymember Kalra, representing Assembly District 27 and Chair of the Assembly Committee on Labor and Employment. Welcome, Assemblymember Kalra.
Thank you so much, Zima. It's great to be here and great to connect with you and all the members out there with Edge.
Thank you so much for taking the time. So let's just jump on in. You know, you're the chair of the Assembly Committee on Labor and Employment. Tell us about that committee and your role as chair.
Well, the committee in general has jurisdiction over a number of areas related to employment. So job and wage and hour, workforce development issues, Cal OSHA, workplace health and safety, as well as kind of trying to take a look at what we can do to empower and support both our workers and employers to make sure that we're creating quality jobs here in California. And one of the other things that I enjoy doing is having informational hearings where you can do real deep dives on issues. We just had one recently on COVID impacts on essential frontline workers, particularly in the food service industry. We've done other informational hearings on a wide range of issues, including issues of warehouse workers and truckers. And I look forward to this next year where we look to do more informational hearings, including on areas regarding restaurant workers and what have you. And we always appreciate feedback we get from industry on these different types of informational hearings we get as well.
Such important work. And, you know, the work of your committee has always been important, but to me, it seems that, you know, COVID-19 has amplified everything, especially for workers and the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a real rough year for all of us in many different ways, but particularly when it comes to our workforce and the impact on workers and how employers have had to adapt on the fly. You know, we've seen it both in the manufacturing space, we've seen it with farm workers, we've seen it on frontline workers in our healthcare industry, obviously, and then with other essential workers, whether they're fast food workers or working at grocery stores. You know, it's a whole new world we're in right now from a year ago. And I think the silver lining that I hope to take away from this, we're right in the middle of it right now, so it's hard to talk about it. But a year from now, I hope that we take lessons in terms of worker health and safety, in terms of employer operations, manufacturer operations, that we could take some lessons going forward that are good for everyone in terms of operations to create healthier and safer workplaces for us all.
Totally agree. So, you know, I want to ask a couple more questions. In your view, what critical roles do organizations such as EDGE, as well as our member organizations, play in advancing the charge of the committee? And, you know, a couple of our members, you know, the Hospital Association, Labor Fed, Career Ladders Project, Policy Link, Workforce Association. I'm not going to leave anyone off, so bear with me. Manufacturers in tech, state building trades. New member is the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. We're really excited to bring them on. So I'd love to just hear your take on what role do we play?
Yeah, it's such a great collection of members that you have that really covers so many important parts of not just industry, but of our society. Adding Trilla is a clear example of that, bringing that voice, the immigrant voice, to the conversation. And I've had a good relationship with everyone you just mentioned. And sometimes it's because we're pushing legislation together. Sometimes someone might have concerns about things that are coming through Labor Committee, and we try to work together and try to resolve issues that we have. But there's no doubt that the work that I do as Labor Committee Chair, the work of our staff as bills come through our committee, can't be done without without EDGE and the coalition of members you just referred to, that they all, this year particularly with COVID, but in general, they all provide incredible feedback to our work, not just in Labor Committee, but as we talk about COVID and coming through this pandemic, how we're going to do it together in a way that's effective and in a way that really allows us to bring back industry in a way that's safe and responsible, and that allows us to get back to where we were as a state with the 5th largest economic engine in the world. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we work together.
Absolutely, and really appreciate your partnership. And we really do stand ready to work with you in partnership, in collaboration, to do what needs to be done for California.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Edge recently released our policy agenda. And I just want to name a couple of things that we're highlighting this year. Supporting workers and employers to get through COVID-19, response and recovery, supporting funding for education and workforce training projects. Always important, but, like I said, uplifted and even highlighted in these times. Protecting, growing, expanding learn and earn opportunities, especially apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships,
Hmm.
expanding and securing social safety nets for underserved communities, underserved, unserved, poorly served communities, to really remove barriers to those quality jobs that we've talked about. Can you share how the committee's priorities may align with some of Edge's priorities?
Oh, I mean, I think each and every one of them is something that we are going to be paying close attention to, not just in this year, this coming year coming out of COVID, but in general. I mean, you talk about things like apprenticeship programs and, when looking at your members, the building trades and the manufacturing association. I mean, there's so many opportunities for partnership where we want to make sure we have high quality jobs with highly skilled workers. And apprenticeships are such a key way to do that when you think about the future of work. I'm on the Future of Work Commission with representatives that include, California Manufacturing Association and Technology Association, as well as folks from labor. And I think a lot of this conversation is when we look to the future, what kinds of jobs do we really want to create in California that we can be proud of creating? And so there's definitely opportunities there. When you talk about COVID, coming into the new year, it's not just about how we could bring our economy back together. I mean, COVID's going to be with us for a few more months. I, that's a best case scenario. I'm very grateful that we're getting vaccines out this month, but obviously it's going to start with our healthcare workers, going to our hospitals, and of course, the hospital association playing a key role in that and working with our nurses and what have you. But I'm very interested when it comes to COVID, not just in how we create safe workplaces and healthy workplaces, but how do we get vaccines out to our workers? And
Mm.
I think that the labor fed and the employers have to work really closely on that. How do we make sure that our essential workers are getting the vaccine quickly, because they're the ones being most affected? Look, I represent the Bay Area, or San Jose in the Bay Area. The three zip codes most heavily impacted by COVID, both in terms of infections and deaths, are in my district in San Jose, the capital of Silicon Valley. Why is
Mm.
that? These are where the workers are. These are heavily Latino zip codes. And these are folks that have to go to work. If they don't, they get fired. How do we get the vaccine to them and make sure that we don't have folks, if we have vaccines going to the private market where, because people have money, they can get it first? We have to protect lives. And I think after we get it to our healthcare workers and our nursing homes, we need to get it to these essential workers. And I think a number of your members play a key role in that conversation and that infrastructure of rolling it out. And I think that's where, I think there's a lot of commonality in the goals you're setting forth. Obviously, those that are suffering through income inequality, those that are not getting the resources, even in this robust economy, although we're in a pandemic recession right now, as we build back, um, as our president-elect says, build back better. Well, what does that mean? I think building back better means that we don't go back to the status quo, that those that are suffering and those that have always been part of the working class that has suffered, even in our robust economy, get a say and get uplifted as we build back our state. And so that's something that is a huge priority of the Labor Committee as we look to building back. And I hope we can partner on some of that work.
Absolutely, we stand ready. And I just have to say, I hear your passion, and it really warms my heart in so many ways, because it's not just about getting back the economy. We have to think about the
Mm-hmm.
people and the health of our
That's right.
people. I
No,
come from my
absolutely.
background. My dad is an immigrant from India. My mom's a Black woman from Mississippi. Both of them are passed now, but we're in the essential workforce lane. So I know from firsthand experience, if they were living today, they would have to be exposing themselves to the virus
Yep.
to bring in the paycheck. And so what are we going to do for those people? It's not just about the economy. It's all of us coming
Well,
on.
I mean, I think that the clear point there is our stock market is doing incredibly well right now.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that people are doing well. In fact, it's quite the opposite. As the stock market is doing great, the lines at our food banks are getting longer. And the reality is, at the end of the day, in the fifth largest economy in the world, in the Bay Area, one of the wealthiest places on the face of the earth, we shouldn't have food banks. I mean, yes, right now, let's make sure they're fully staffed and they have the resources, but let's have the conversation of how do we make sure we have no one unhoused, that we have everyone has health care, that everyone has food on their plate and has a job with dignity. Those are the goals of a great society, and we're falling far short of that right now.
Agree with everything you said. Everything you said. So, throughout your career, you voiced strong, and this kind of taps into what we were talking about. You voiced strong support for equity. Can you share something your office is working on or paying special attention to that, as we move forward into the new year, will address workforce and education equity?
Well, there's so much to kind of unwrap there in terms of what we need to do. I mean, if you look at our education system, again, being in the heart, the capital of Silicon Valley, we have so many students being left behind, even before the pandemic. The way that I put it is that, look, we have a tale of two valleys. We have a tale of two states as well. I live and represent a community where you have kids that are growing up, literally living in the shadows of some of the wealthiest companies on the face of the earth. Some are worth or approaching $1 trillion of worth. And yet the likelihood of those kids walking through those front doors with a meaningful job is next to zero. That's completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. And we have to change that. And the digital divide and inclusion is a huge part of that. But we also have to put some responsibility on the companies. I go to these, workshops, or I go to these seminars or summits, and they'll have panel discussions on education and equity and STEM education. And like, well, when we talk about diversity, they're like, well, we don't see the pool, the applicant pool. And it's just false. The reality is they've been saying that for 20, 30 years. They've had decades to deal with that problem. If they saw it as a problem, they would have fixed that problem by now. It's how they're hiring. The reality is, if you keep hiring people the same way you've always hired, you're going to keep hiring the same people you've always hired. And the reality is they've got to hire more women, more Latinos, African Americans into roles as engineers, as accountants, as graphic designers, as lawyers, you name it. The responsibility falls on those that have the decision-making power. And that's where we've faced resistance. And when we try to say you have to have a woman on your board of directors, you have to have a person of color, well, there's a lot of resistance to that. And well, it's because you've had decades to actually diversify those boards and you haven't done it. When we had a bill, we've had bills over the last few years that have been authored, that I've been proud to co-sponsor or co-author, that would require them to reveal how they're paying folks, in terms of gender equity, in terms of race. Are you paying people the same in the same job classification? And the tech industry and other industries fight it tooth and nail. So you can talk all you want about equity. You can put all these fancy commercials on TV about how Black Lives Matter. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to actually put the work in and actually show that you're willing to sacrifice some of the status quo that you've helped build, then those words fall flat.
I appreciate everything that you said. BLM and the movement's more than a hashtag, right? It's more than a
That's
t-shirt.
right. Exactly.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, we have to actually put action behind it. And we saw that even this year with some of the resistance on the police accountability bills, where, it was great to have legislators go on the steps of the Capitol and take a knee for 8 minutes. But I'd rather have them take 8 seconds and push the yes button on some of these bills that actually will make meaningful systemic change.
I wish I could push the celebration button on here for that. I'll just maybe have to do jazz hands. Yes. Yes. Well, we're going to have fun partnering this year, Assemblymember.
Yeah.
That was all very, very heavy, and we're going to be wrapping soon. So I want to end with a fun question that you're the guy to answer this. So as we talked about, you represent District 27, Assembly District 27, which is in the San Jose area, as we talked about. If strict COVID regulations and restrictions were not a factor right now, what's something that you'd highly recommend doing this time of year in your neighborhood?
Well, this is actually an easy question for San Jose, especially since I represent downtown. We have had for decades now Christmas in the Park. It's one of the largest holiday celebrations in the country. And it usually brings, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of folks that come through downtown. There's a downtown ice, the skating rink is there. along with rides for the kids, and you get hot chocolate. It's a free event, and so it's beautiful because San Jose is an incredibly diverse city, and you see the diversity of San Jose in downtown during the course of about a month, over a month or so, 5-6 weeks, where we have Christmas in the park. And so this year they're doing something different. They're doing a drive-through with all the lights and all that stuff. There's still something going on, but it's great that they're doing something, but it's not the same. I'm hoping this time next year, folks from all around the state can come to San Jose, spend a weekend in San Jose, and really enjoy downtown. And it's an amazing place to be during this time of year.
I'm so glad to learn about that. I had never heard that. I have a 13-year-old that'll be a 14-year-old when we're able to get together again,
Yep.
and we're coming down, and I'm going to find
Come on
you.
down. Come on down.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Assemblymember, it has truly been a pleasure connecting with you. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Zima. Thank you to Edge and to all your partners. It's always great to work with you.
Absolutely, same. And we'll see you next time on The Cutting Edge.